William, hey, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate you coming on the Highwire here to talk about your experience. You spent the last year living in Delhi, and now you're the co-founder and president of Charity United. Tell us what that was like over this past year.
Okay, so I've been in India for the last 16 months, actually, over a year, right? So I arrived before the whole coronavirus scare hit. We originally went into the lockdown when everybody was uncertain, was this a real thing or not, right? And throughout the year, you read the news and you hear a lot about, the coronavirus being so dangerous. But, I lived in the slums. I actually had a room in the slums because I work with children in the slums, okay? So I was in these places you see right now, I was with those children. I will tell you one thing. We don't know of a single corona death in the slums, right? I mean, we didn't hear about it. We hear about corona deaths on the news, but we have failed to see or witness any corona cases. I remember once the street was locked down because there was a reported corona case, but we did not hear of that person dying or anything, okay? Now, also, what people don't understand, you call for a lockdown. A lockdown may work in the developed world. It may work in Beverly Hills, like social distancing may work in Beverly Hills. Hell, it's worked there for the last 20 years, I think, right? But in a developing country, you cannot social distance, okay? You're in the slum. Families live in a room of 100 square feet, and you've got 9 people in it, okay?
So you're talking survival. So when the lockdowns were happening,
it's like these people can't survive anyways, right? Like corona is the least of their worries. Okay.
When the lockdowns happened in India, did anybody change their life, or was it still along that trajectory?
It was an absolute disaster for the common person, okay, the man on the street. Because what you have to understand, and this is not a criticism of the Indian government, but you have to realize that the tax base of India is 1.5% of the population. Only 1.5% of the population actually pays taxes. So out of 100 people, only one person contributes, to the funds in society. They are working very hard, doing the best they can. But out of 100 people, 98 and a half are below the taxable bracket. You understand? They don't make enough. So most people make their daily living on the streets. So when the lockdown happens, you have an exodus.
Yes, I want to bring in an article here just to back you up. Yeah. So the lockdowns and poverty. There's a writer, his name's Joe Wallen, he's the Indian correspondent in Mumbai, and he wrote this in April. I believe this was in the Telegraph, writing about lockdowns and poverty. He said, now hunger stalks India as country's COVID crisis deepens. A wider disaster is building, one that, if left unchecked, could start to engulf large parts of the country. And at that time, this was in April, he writes this: a draconian 2-month lockdown from March to June last year pushed an estimated 400 million Indians into further poverty and resulted in around 32 million Indians dropping out of the country's burgeoning middle class. So I'm just saying that to back you up here. What did you see on the ground there when these lockdowns came in? How did it sweep through?
That. Yeah, exactly that. Wow. It's like all the small businesses, the people that live day to day to feed their children, lost their jobs, okay? And these people work very hard. Now, what did you see as a result of that? Well, the quality of food goes down. The government's doing all it can to assist with food distribution. And really, it's like the government actually deserves credit, right? It's the media, the fake media that's driving the panic. The government is doing everything it can to step in where it can with its limited resources. But here's the other thing you have to understand. if you've been to a developing country, the way the economy works, the way the people interact, it's like it's the small farms in the slums. They'll grow some vegetables, okay? They go into the city to sell those. And, they're handled by hand. Doesn't matter if they wear a mask or not. People come out of their houses to purchase. It's handled by hand. Food is cooked by hand. You don't eat with a knife and a fork. Last year, I did not eat with a knife and a fork. It's just now that I'm back in the West that I'm using, first time in a year I use a knife and a fork. Okay? That's not the way it goes. Frequently, there's a shared water pump, and you have to hand pump, in order to get water. The kids will hand pump. They will drink with their hands. Now the next person comes, and so anything that's contagious spreads within hours. There is no way, that a mask or a lockdown does anything. Now, if you look at the kids, they live in slums. They live in metal shacks. Anything put together, it's 105 degrees. Maybe even 150 degrees. 50.
So you're talking about the fake news media, or the media is kind of overinflating this. Now we're seeing pictures here in the U.S. of the crematoriums are packed. We're seeing them burn bodies. That we're being told that there's not enough room, and there are bodies floating in the rivers. What can you say to that? What have you seen with that?
So I, the slums I operated in were next to a river. I will tell you, like a funeral can cost, a cheap funeral costs 1,500 rupees or 15,000 rupees, right? It's roughly $300. Okay. When you're making 100 rupees a day or less, I mean, this is an incredible amount. So the people in the slums will bury their bodies in the sand. At the side of the river, okay? It just happens. There's just no way around this. You can find this any time of year. This is not something new, right? So yes, bodies are buried, next to the river on a regular basis, because it's the best they can do for their loved ones, and for the press to be using this, and using this pain to push their own agenda is disgusting. I am disgusted. Right?
Thank you for shedding some light on that from your point of view. Now, let me go back to the lockdowns really quick. The UN specifically said about the deaths due to lockdowns. Now, they didn't say it in those terms, but they said 239,000 deaths were reported. And there's a headline for that here. I can read directly from that. It says, they say disruptions in health service due to COVID-19, quote, may have contributed to an additional 239,000 child and maternal deaths in South Asia, the UN report. Health services must urgently be restored and strengthened to contain the pandemic's impact on the most vulnerable families. Do you think those numbers are accurate?
Those are the conservative figures. If you look at the report that's based on, that's their most conservative figure, and the upper limit is, I think, 1.2 million people. Right, that would be the worst case scenario, and the best case scenario is that 239,000. And yeah, it's very real. It is very real. Even in the slums that I operated on, and I do education mainly, right? Because I've had to step in, right? Because basic medical services aren't available. Now, I'm not a doctor. Luckily, I have a lot of doctors as friends in the United States, so I can get on my cell phone, and take a picture of the condition and relay data, and then get expert advice, so I could go and find the medicines needed, right? But this is all, these services are all cut off.
On the other side of the coin, so we're being told that there's these surging deaths. In a country of over 1 billion people, is 4,000 deaths a day from COVID, as we're being told, is that a substantial amount with that many people?
I don't, it's like, it's tragic, 4,000 deaths, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, India also has a 11% diabetes rate, okay? That's 110 million people that have diabetes and are already more susceptible. So you already have a comorbidity that is a third of the U.S. population, to put it in perspective. So
Right.
India has 1.3 billion registered population, right? And not everybody can afford to register, and not all births are reported. So, the actual figure may be closer to 1.5 billion. We don't know. You understand? This is an estimate.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at 1.5 billion, you have to add the United States, you have to add Russia, and you have to add Europe in order to get a comparable view. But I want to go back to the deaths due to starvation and malnutrition caused by lockdown measures, right? Let's put that in perspective. Let's be very kind and say, let's take the conservative figure of 239 million, right? Nazi Germany took 6 years to starve 1.5 million people to death. Right now, we are on target, on par with Nazi Germany of starving children to death, right? And that's if we take the conservative figure. If we take the upper limit, we're beating Nazi Germany by 5 times, right? And I don't understand how you can barter your safety for the death of children.
Incredible statement. Well, what's going on there right now, and how do we move forward? How do we move out of this situation, in your view?
So in my view, well, actually, it's a much larger situation. It's like we're only talking about the right now, right? You have an educational crisis. Realize that children in the slums, have a very short time period where they can get educated, right? If they miss that time period, they'll never get out of the slums, right? You either get educated and break out, or you stay uneducated and you're back to a life of living on the streets. Now, those pictures you just showed, right? I know those kids. I spoke to them every day. You know what they were doing? The kid looks like he's playing in the sand. No, he's building his own school, right? Because they're cut off from education. And these kids were so excited when I would show up and give them classes. They built their own school. The 6-year-olds were, Mr. William, look, they dug out
Incredible.
10 tons of dirt with their bare hands over a period of 2 weeks. I had not asked them, you understand? It's like I would never put children to work like this. They are digging out a place for their own school. They're laying bricks, in their slum, so I can come and teach every day, right? And I had a few teenagers that gave, but look how happy they are working for their education, right? This is what a 15-year-old, his name is Vipin, he gives a class every day, and I provide him with materials, and I taught him how to teach. These kids know without an education, they'll never get out of the slums. But with a year of schools being closed and no access and lockdowns, and we talk about online learning, does it look like they have Wi-Fi and laptops in the slums?
Right.
You understand? So you have 200 million children permanently out of school. And
in your 30 years of humanitarian work, I mean, I know you've been doing this for quite some time. I can imagine you've never seen anything like this. Would that be correct statement?
I've never seen anything like it, and it blows me away. The unthinking, arbitrary rules that are imposed. Again, if you're in Beverly Hills, if you're in Hollywood, if you're in Manhattan, social distancing has been the norm for the last few decades, right? Walled fences, walled gardens, and but we used to call socially distanced, we used to call that antisocial behavior, right? That's what being socially distant was. It was antisocial behavior. Now apparently it's normal, but the long-term ramifications for children, the effects both in health, right? Because their food, the parents can't make a living, so their food is reduced, right? Their health gradually deteriorates. Now, if you look at the India statistics, I looked at the India statistics as well when I was in India. In January, everything was calm. Nobody was worried about the thing. We thought it was all under control. And then the vaccinations start, right? Now, if you look at the vaccinations, and you watch for that 3-week incubation after vaccination, you'll see the exact same trend with cases. And following the cases trend, with a little delay, you'll see the deaths. So in the world of statistical analysis, we call this an identical trend. It's what we're looking for to find causation, right? Like, we don't call this coincidence. We call this causation in statistical analysis.
Right, and we've covered this on the show extensively. These are all signals that should be looked at. This is still an experimental product, and we actually did report, I did a report about a month ago where a lot of the media organizations were saying the decline in India has been unprecedented, and that was before the vaccines came in. They were trying to figure out what they were doing. Was it the lockdowns? Was it the social distancing? But
it was never the lockdowns, because the lockdowns were in people's imagination. You understand? You're in a slum. You saw a picture with me and 6 people. That was somebody's household. You understand? The bed doubles as a dinner table, and you have 3 feet to walk through. You have shelves for your clothes, and under the beds, is where you store your possessions. Okay, guess what? 5 people, 10 people share the beds at night, right? Including the kids.
Okay.
And that's in the slums. You go to the inner city slums, you see buildings. You go through rats' alleys. All you see the doors with cloths hanging in front of those. Those are actual doors to people's apartment. It's one room, and a family of 6 or 8 people lives behind these curtains. There are no doors. And this is one of the more decent sections of a slum, okay? Now, there's one shared bathroom, okay? There's one shared bathroom for all these families, up to 8 families. There you go. There's a little tap, and if the water is not running, they'll have buckets standing because the water shuts off, once, twice a day.
Wow.
William. So to talk about social distancing and a mask, it never happened. In Fauci's imagination, it happened. In reality, in Islam, it does not happen. It's impossible. The World Health Organization knows this. UNICEF knows this. Any doctor with experience on the actual ground, any aid worker who has been to places, to war zones, to refugee zones, knows that there is absolutely no social distancing. Okay,
William, this is incredible. This is incredible information, and it's been really eye-opening. And we really appreciate you coming on to really give a boots on the ground report on what's going on here. This has really been incredible. And you're at Charity United. Is there any other place that people can go to